The voice in your head isn't clarity. It's fear pretending to be wisdom. And Carl Jung warned us about it long before we knew how loud it could get. You're overthinking again, aren't you? That quiet war behind your eyes. The loops. The what-ifs. The scenarios that never happen, but still drain you like they did. Why can't you just move? Why does every step feel like a trap? Why does your mind sound like it's trying to protect you? But all it ever does is paralyze you. Carl Jung called it neurotic overfunctioning of consciousness. In simpler words, you're trying to think your way out of something only your soul can feel. You see, we've been conditioned to trust logic above all else, to plan everything, to control every outcome, to calculate every decision like life is a chessboard. But Jung understood something deeper. The more you try to control the process, the more you separate from your purpose. Let that sink in. Because the truth is brutal. You're not stuck because you lack clarity. You're stuck because you don't trust what's already trying to guide you from the inside. So what is this inner guidance? Carl Jung called it the self. Not your ego, not your mind, not your fears, but the center of your being. The divine blueprint. The voice that knows who you were before the world told you who to be. But that self, it doesn't shout. It whispers. It nudges. It moves in symbols, emotions, dreams, and strange coincidences. And most of us are so busy thinking, we never hear it. Here's the trap of overthinking Jung warned about. It gives you the illusion of progress, while actually making you avoid the one thing that would free you. Action. You don't think your way into your purpose. You live your way into it. One uncertain, uncomfortable, illogical step at a time. And guess what? That's why it's terrifying. Because overthinking is safer than becoming. You can't fail at imagining. But you can fail at becoming who you truly are. And that's the fear that keeps most people asleep. But what if that fear is lying to you? What if it's not protecting you, but preventing you? Carl Jung believed that the psyche will manufacture anxiety, confusion, even depression, when the true path of your soul is being ignored. You don't feel stuck because something is wrong with you. You feel stuck because something is right within you, and it's tired of being silenced. Jung's answer wasn't to silence the mind. It was to understand it, to observe the ego like a child throwing a tantrum, scared, desperate, needing control in a world it doesn't understand. But your soul, it doesn't need control. It needs trust. Trust in the process. Trust in the unfolding. Trust in the path, even when it's unclear. Let's be real. You've tried controlling everything. You've overanalyzed every path, played out every worst-case scenario, held back every impulse until it made you sick inside. And still, you're not at peace. You don't feel free. You don't feel aligned. You feel like you're wearing a life that doesn't belong to you. That's your inner self knocking. That's the purpose you keep pushing down, because it doesn't come with a guarantee. But Jung was clear. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. So how do you stop overthinking and start awakening? Start by noticing when your thoughts aren't helping. They're stalling. Start by listening not just to what makes sense, but to what feels alive. That excitement you dismissed as irrational, that pull towards something you can't explain, that urge to step into a version of you that scares your current identity. That's your inner compass. And the more you follow it, the quieter the noise becomes. This doesn't mean don't think. It means don't get lost in the maze of your mind. Use your mind as a tool, but never as your master. Jung believed the psyche has its own intelligence, that we don't create purpose, we uncover it. And we uncover it by trusting that something greater is already at work inside us. Here's the hard truth. Purpose doesn't show up with a plan. It shows up with a question, a discomfort, a calling, a moment where your soul says, "This isn't it. There's more." And the people who answer that call, they don't do it with certainty. They do it with faith. Not religious faith, but the faith that something real is trying to emerge through you. So let this be your reminder. You don't have to figure everything out today. You just have to stop hiding behind a lie that thinking more will save you. Because Jung would tell you, your clarity won't come from control. It'll come from surrender, from quieting the mind, and letting the soul finally speak. And what it says, that's where your real life begins. Have you ever tried holding your breath through life? Trying to control everything. Holding in your fears, your urges, your dreams. Because letting go felt dangerous. That's how most people live. Tense, guarded, always calculating. Carl Jung saw it clearly. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Let that burn through your mind. Because here's the truth. Most people don't surrender because they trust life. They surrender because they've exhausted themselves fighting it. Overthinking is a form of resistance. You think because you don't want to feel. You plan because you don't want to risk. You stay stuck because it's safer than stepping into uncertainty. But guess what? That uncertainty is exactly where your transformation begins. Think of it this way. Your purpose is not a destination. It's a becoming. And becoming isn't clean. It's messy. It's full of not knowing. It's uncomfortable, terrifying, and sacred. Jung believed that the soul doesn't evolve by staying in comfort. It evolves through confrontation. Confronting your shadows, confronting your doubts, confronting the voice in you that says, "You're not ready. You're not enough." That voice, it's not truth. It's your ego trying to protect a version of you that needs to die. Yes, I said it. Die. Not physically, but psychologically. The you that overthinks, that fears change, that needs every detail before moving. That version of you has done its job. It kept you safe. It kept you alive. But it can't take you where your soul is asking you to go. Jung called this process individuation, the sacred journey of becoming your true self. Not the self you perform. Not the self you've constructed to please others. Not the self you built to survive childhood pain. But the authentic self, the self that existed before fear ever touched you. This process isn't instant. It doesn't come with validation. It's silent, slow, and deeply personal. And it begins the moment you stop trying to control everything. Here's the paradox. The more you try to think your way to your purpose, the further you drift from it. Because your purpose doesn't live in your mind. It lives in your alignment. Have you ever done something that made no sense on paper, but felt so right in your body, in your heart? That was your inner self leading. That was surrender, not to weakness, but to wisdom deeper than logic. Let me give you an example Jung loved. Dreams. We can't control dreams. We don't plan them. They come uninvited, often strange, symbolic, wild. But dreams hold messages from the unconscious, truths we've buried, desires we're afraid to admit, paths we need to walk. Jung believed your unconscious is always speaking to you. You just stopped listening because you wanted everything to make sense first. But your real path, it shows up first as a feeling, a gut pull, a quiet nudge, a moment of silence where your soul says, "This way, even if you're scared." Overthinking drowns that voice. It fills the silence with noise. It covers intuition with strategy. But there is no strategy for soul alignment. There's only surrender. And surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means showing up with faith instead of fear. It means choosing movement over mastery, progress over perfection, sensation over certainty. So, how do you live this? You start noticing where you're forcing. Are you forcing clarity? Forcing success? Forcing people to understand you? That force? That's resistance. Let go. Let what's meant to fall, fall. Let what wants to rise, rise. Because when you stop forcing, you make space for flow. And flow is where purpose lives. Jung often said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But most people miss that privilege because they're too busy trying to become what the world rewards. Listen, you don't need another 5-year plan. You need 5 seconds of courage to trust the next step, even if the path isn't fully lit. And when you take that step, life responds. Synchronicities, opportunities, clarity you couldn't force, but found you when you stopped chasing. Jung warned that ignoring this process causes suffering, anxiety, depression, the feeling of being off without knowing why. Because the soul can't be silenced forever. It will scream through your emotions, break through your routines, and force you to choose. Will you stay safe, or will you start living? Look, I'm not telling you to be reckless. I'm telling you to be real. If something in you feels dead, stop pretending it's fine. That numbness isn't laziness. It's your soul saying, "You've stayed here too long." And if you're scared, good. That means you're close. Purpose is always guarded by fear. Not because you're wrong, but because what's ahead is big enough to change you. Here's the final truth for today. You don't find purpose in a perfect plan. You find it when you stop betraying your inner knowing. When you stop asking permission to evolve. When you finally say, "I don't know where this leads, but I trust what's calling me to move." That's not weakness. That's power. That's the process. And Carl Jung would say, that's the beginning of your true life. What if the thing you're running from is the thing that will set you free? Let that question sit in your spirit. Carl Jung didn't just study the light in people. He studied their darkness, their trauma, their hidden scars. And he discovered something radical. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Most people try to heal by avoiding the wound. They overthink it. They suppress it. They build routines, identities, and distractions around it. But your wound is not your weakness. Your wound is your initiation. Think about the most painful moment of your life. Now ask yourself, did it break you? Or did it reveal something that was asleep inside you? Jung saw this clearly. The very thing that causes the greatest suffering can lead to the deepest transformation. He called this sacred process, the wounded healer. The idea is this: we're not healed by pretending to be perfect. We're healed by becoming honest about what hurt us, and then letting that pain teach us instead of define us. Overthinking keeps you stuck in the why. Why did this happen to me? Why wasn't I protected? Why didn't they stay? But healing begins when you shift the question from why to, what is this trying to awaken in me? Because pain without meaning is just suffering. But pain with awareness becomes power. You're not here to avoid difficulty. You're here to walk through it with awareness. Not to become bitter, but to become brilliantly aware of who you really are. Jung often warned that when we repress our pain, we don't get rid of it. We bury it, and it festers. It comes out in self-sabotage, in toxic relationships, in addictions, in constant overthinking and doubting yourself. But when you bring light to that shadow, when you sit with the wound and listen, you begin to see something sacred. That wound was never the enemy. It was the doorway. Doorway to what? To your purpose, to your calling, to the part of you that only comes alive when everything else has fallen apart. This is why Jung respected the breakdown, the dark night of the soul, because he knew Deep down, that breakdown is not the end. It's the beginning of truth. The world teaches you to seek comfort, but the soul seeks wholeness. And wholeness means embracing your contradictions, your light and shadow, your strength and your struggle. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Carl Jung. That quote isn't just motivational. It's a roadmap. It means your story is not over. It means your pain is not final. It means you are not bound by your past unless you choose to be. Now let me speak directly to your heart. If you've been overthinking your life, stuck in loops of regret, shame, or confusion, stop. Not because it's easy, but because it's costing you your future. You can't move forward while dragging every version of yourself behind. You can't rise while clinging to stories that no longer serve who you're becoming. The wound may explain your start, but it doesn't get to define your finish. Jung taught that the path to purpose isn't in avoiding life. It's in fully experiencing it. The good, the bad, the broken. All of it. Because the more you feel, the more you awaken. And the more you awaken, the more your life stops being a performance and starts becoming a transformation. Let me tell you something Jung believed deeply. You are not here by accident. There is a reason your journey has had turbulence. There is a reason you've had to endure more than others. There is a reason your soul has been marked by trials, by delays, by detours. Not because you're cursed, but because you're chosen to rise with a depth of insight that shallow comfort could never give you. That's the irony. You want to escape your pain, but your purpose is carved through it. The ego hates this truth. The ego wants logic. The ego wants control. The ego wants guarantees. But the soul wants truth. The soul wants expansion. The soul wants surrender. And surrender doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means you stop asking life to be easy and start asking yourself to be courageous. So, here's your challenge. What if you stopped overthinking your path and started trusting your pain? What if the betrayal was your redirection? What if the loss was the pruning before your blooming? What if the loneliness was preparing you for the relationships you truly deserve? Jung said, "We are not what we know, but what we are willing to become." Stop waiting for clarity to feel perfect. Start walking with the courage to feel uncertain. Because the moment you trust that your wound is not random, the moment you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" is the moment your transformation begins. Look at your life. Every mistake, every detour, every heartbreak. Now look again, not with shame, but with soul. Everything in your story was preparing you for this moment of awakening. Not to become what the world wants, but to become who you were always meant to be. So stop overthinking. Start feeling. Start listening. Start trusting. Your inner purpose is not somewhere out there. It's here. In this pain. In this process. In this quiet moment of surrender. Carl Jung would say, "You are not broken. You are becoming. You didn't come here just to survive. You came here to become. To become someone deeper, fuller, wiser. And not in spite of your struggles, but because of them." Carl Jung taught something that rattled the foundation of how we think about identity. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That means your purpose isn't something to find. It's something to remember. It's already within you, waiting to be revealed. But here's the catch. The you who is meant to live that purpose has to be reborn. Let's talk about the ego for a second. The ego is not evil. It's just scared. It wants predictability, recognition, and control. It wants to look good rather than be real. So it clings to certainty. It clings to overthinking. It clings to stories like, "I'm not ready. What if I fail? I need more proof." But Jung saw clearly. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. In other words, if you don't become aware of your own patterns, you'll mistake your fears for your future. This is why overthinking is so dangerous. It gives the illusion of intelligence while actually feeding fear. It disguises avoidance as analysis. You don't need more thinking. You need more courage, more presence, more truth. You need to stop running simulations in your head and start saying yes to the life that's calling you, even if it's messy, even if it's not fully mapped out. Because purpose isn't found through control. It's found through alignment. Alignment with what? With your soul, with your instincts, with the part of you that already knows who you are, if you'd only stop doubting it. This is the heart of Jung's work. Not to give people more information, but to guide them back to their inner authority. He didn't want you to follow the crowd. He wanted you to become an individual. Not an ego, but in essence. So let me ask you something real. When was the last time you trusted yourself? Really trusted yourself? Not because you had all the answers, but because you felt the truth in your bones. You see, the mind can only take you so far. Eventually, the path splits. Logic pulls you one way. Your soul pulls another. And that's when the real choice begins. Will you overthink your way out of alignment? Or will you surrender to the deeper path? And yes, surrender is terrifying. But Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. This world is loud. It tells you what to wear, what to want, what to chase. It fills your mind with noise. But your heart is quiet. It doesn't beg. It whispers. And you'll only hear it when you stop overthinking long enough to listen. The greatest battles are not out there. They're in here, between your fear and your freedom, between your shadow and your light, between who you've been told to be and who you're truly meant to become. The shadow says, stay small, play it safe, don't make a mistake. But the soul says, step forward, speak truth, grow. And Jung's genius was that he didn't tell you to kill the shadow. He told you to integrate it. You see, your shadow, the part you hide, deny, repress, it holds gold. It holds your fire, your passion, your untamed truth. But as long as you reject it, you remain half alive. As long as you overthink it, you stay trapped in perfectionism, procrastination, and performance. Jung's path to purpose was not clean. It was not neat. It was messy, wild, real, just like you. So, here's what you need to understand. Purpose isn't about a job title. It's not about applause. It's not about doing what looks right. Purpose is about authenticity, about living from the soul, even when it makes no sense to the mind, even when others don't get it. Jung said, a man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them. Translation: you have to go through it to grow through it. No shortcuts. No skipping steps. The fire will burn off the false layers, so the true self can emerge. And when that true self comes forward, you stop overthinking. You start knowing. Not knowing with your brain, but knowing with your being. You walk different.